coronavirus is all political. And if you simply decide that you are part of a Republican Party, then you can open up and the coronavirus won't hurt you. It's a pretty dangerous place to be.
Sure.
So we're going to stay on these.
All right, Naomi tells me our audience is with us and we're ready to record, and we know your time is tight, so we're going to get started.
You bet.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm New York City Council Member Brad Lander, and I'm so pleased to welcome you all to this digital town hall with Senator Elizabeth Warren to hear from and stand with essential workers. As we begin, I want to acknowledge first the staggering losses to COVID-19 here in New York City and all across the country. Those deaths have been concentrated in low-income and working-class communities of color, but they have hit so many of us. Senator Warren, we're all sending you our condolences on the loss of your brother, Donald. This week, we lost the first Amazon warehouse worker on Staten Island, and we've lost dozens of transit workers, nurses, teachers, everyone a world. We remember them, and we're going to fight like hell in their memory. I love going out on the stoop with my family at 7 p.m. every night to express our gratitude, but banging pots and pans is not enough when the delivery worker bringing the meal to your house can't even take a paid sick day, when workers don't have enough PPE but then are fired or threatened just for speaking up about it, or when people are working right now for less than they'd be getting if they were on unemployment. So we owe them more than cheering. We have to listen to their stories and then fight for policies that get them the pay, sick leave, protections, and dignity they deserve. That's the idea behind this town hall and behind the Essential Worker Bill of Rights, which Senator Warren has introduced in Congress, and we've introduced a version of it in the New York City Council. We're joined today by the sponsors of the local legislation, our Speaker, Corey Johnson, Majority Leader Lori Cumbo, and Council Member Ben Kalos. But boy, very few leaders have listened more carefully to the stories of working people or fought harder for them than Senator Warren. She helped to reveal the crisis of crushing debt facing American families and fought to improve America's bankruptcy laws to better support working people, work that also involved my father, David Lander, who's on this call. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that she won has recovered over $12 billion for working people from corporations who cheated them. And finally, in her presidential campaign, she lifted up the stories of garment workers and washerwomen and factory workers and janitors who worked hard every day to feed their families and still, just like the workers on this call, found the courage to organize for change. So it's no surprise that in the COVID crisis, she has stepped up again as a champion of working people. And it is my tremendous honor to introduce Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Thank you very much, Brad, and thank you all for being on this call. I am so honored to be here with you, and I'm so honored to be here with essential workers. You know, one of the things that this COVID-19 crisis has shown us is truly who are the essential workers in our country. And guess what? It turns out it's not the investment bankers. It turns out it's the doctors and nurses, bless them all, but it's also the people who are mopping the floors in the hospitals, the people who are making deliveries, the people who are stocking the grocery store shelves, the people who are going into folks' homes as home health care workers, the people who are keeping this country going while the rest of us try to shelter in place and not overwhelm our healthcare system. Well, my view on this is, if these essential workers are willing to get out there and put their own health at risk, sometimes putting their family's health at risk, then the very least the rest of us can do is make sure that they have some genuine protection. And that means both medical protection and it means economic protection. So Congressman Ro Khanna from out in California and I have put together something called an Essential Workers Bill of Rights in order to protect the essential workers who are on the front lines. And it's about making sure that they have appropriate protective gear and that they get paid sick leave if they get sick, that they get full health care coverage. But it's also about making sure they get a bonus in their wages, hazardous duty pay, that they have access to childcare, and that they have good access to either forming a union if they don't have one, or protecting collective bargaining rights if they already do, and whistleblower protections for anyone who points out unsafe conditions. I am so glad to be here today because I'm glad to see people who are picking up this idea at the state level and saying, we want to see it at the federal level, but we are determined to see it right now, right here in our state. So thank you for having me with you today, and thank you to all of the essential workers and advocates for essential workers who are tuning in to help us in this.
Thank you so much, Senator. And I want to introduce you to 5 of those essential workers. We're going to tell a little bit about what their workplaces are like now, and so grateful to be here with you and the ways that you're fighting for them. Let me introduce them all first, and then they can speak one at a time, but maybe wave as we introduce you. Elizabeth Frascati is a member of 1199 SEIU and a pharmacy technician at Northwell Staten Island University Hospital. Welcome, Elizabeth. Christine Maroli is a member of RWDSU Local 338, and she works at a Stop and Shop in Howard Beach, Queens, and had a great piece in the New Yorker about her job last week. Amara Sanogo is an Uber driver, a longtime member of New York Taxi Workers Alliance, and he used to drive a yellow cab, but has been driving for Uber for the last 3 years. Luis Torres is a fast food worker with Chipotle in Manhattan and organizes with 32BJ SEIU. And Jessica Yance is a crane operator and a shop steward for her Teamsters local at Sims Municipal Recycling, where she is right now, the facility on the Brooklyn waterfront that processes all of New York City's residential recycling. Jessica, let's start with you. I mean, all 5 of you had hard jobs before this crisis that didn't necessarily provide the adequate pay and dignity and protection you'd want. But I guess tell us especially, how have things changed for you? What's different now about your work in this crisis?
I would have to say the hours that we're working, because a lot of our employees did get affected by the corona, as in their wives, some children, grandparents, mother-in-laws. So a lot of them had to take off. So we worked a lot of overtime to make sure we keep running. I would have to say more cleaning of the facility. They used to clean maybe once a day, and since we're a 24-hour operation, they do it 3 times a day. More PPE, social distancing. Now we opened up the 3 floors so we could keep more separated during lunchtime and things like that. More face masks that were supplied by the company and the union. And no more visitors. We used to always have visitations from schools and nearby colleges, and we don't allow that anymore to try to keep it small and safe for us.
My kids loved the field trip that they took to Sims Recycling Facility, actually. So.
The little tour upstairs, yeah. We try to educate, recycling. I mean, we're very about the environment, Teamsters and Sims, so.
Elizabeth, obviously our hospitals are awfully different than they were, but we're so grateful, as the Senator said, to everybody doing the healthcare work on the front lines. Talk to us about what it's like at Staten Island University Hospital, what it's been like.
Thank you for having me, first off, but I can't, it's something that, like, I can't even describe how fast it exploded. The hospital tripled, maybe quadrupled the amount of patients that we would normally have. And there were so many people on vents that we were running out of medication that we use to keep them sedated so that, they don't cause further damage. Like, we had, my department was actually denied PPE for up until maybe 2 weeks ago. They wouldn't give us N95 masks, even though we were going into these open units. Any unit that we had, or it was post-op or a recovery, everything got changed and turned into a COVID unit. And most of them were critical care. We normally would have 3 critical care units, and the hospital had, I think, around 7 at the peak. And they're open. They have patients one after another vented in these big open rooms. And you have to have a lot of people going in and out of them. My department, we delivered medication. There was environmental people delivering food. Everybody was going in and out of these units besides nursing, and they were denying us the same PPE that they were giving them. So it's definitely has slowed down now, but I don't think it's over. And fortunately, there's probably going to be a second or third wave.
Thank you for all of that, really. Christine, talk about what it's been like to be on the job and having to be on the job at Stop and Shop.
It's tough. Every day is different. You try and do the right thing. You want to do the right thing. Sometimes it's not that easy. You know, you see so many people throughout the course of a day. You're worried about yourself, and you're worried about bringing it home to your family. For the most part, customer-wise, they're pretty good. You, of course, get your few that aren't so good, but we're very, very lucky in the sense where Local 338, as well as the company I work for, work together, and they provided us with plexiglass for the cash registers as well as the customer service. We have face shields, we have masks and gloves. We have Purell at every register, and they have us using every other register to social distance. So as a cashier, when you turn around, customer is right in the face. So it's good that we're using every other one so you have that distancing. We've been also lucky where if you do test positive, which we have had people test positive, you get paid 2 weeks. If you get quarantined because you work with that person, you also get paid 2 weeks. And then you would start to take your own time, but most people come back before that. And we also, thank God, get hazard pay. They extended that until the end of May. So we are pretty protected. We really are very lucky.
That's great. Thank you, Christina. We're going to hear from Amaro and Luis in a minute, but I know Senator Warren's on a tight schedule because I think they're voting today. So I want to kick it over to her to talk to you guys and ask some questions before she has to go.
Thank you, Brad, and thanks so much for telling your story. Christine, I was really struck when you talk about feeling lucky because you do have personal protective gear and you do have the ability to be paid and take off work if you get sick or if you get exposed. And what we're working on at the federal level is making sure everybody gets that if anyone's out on the front lines, that they get it. So if I can, I just want to see if I can just ask one question around this. And that is, what's the thing, and it could be any of you, answer this, what's the thing that would make you feel most valued and protected in your workplace? Anybody?
It's a tough question. For me, kindness, like we're all in it together.
Yeah.
And it's tough as an employee and it's tough as a customer, but we need to come together. If I could see more of that, that would be great. But we're, like I said, very lucky with everything that they give us. So I feel protected.
Good. Anyone else want to
Yeah,
talk about it? Please.
I'd like to talk about it.
Please.
I would like to see a sort of protection for the workers in case they get sick. For example, I wouldn't want myself or other my coworkers having to fear that they might be fired because there's no protection at work. And that's the case for many of my coworkers who tell me they have the virus and they tell me, oh, I have to go in or else I will get fired, or I'm scared I might lose my job.
Yeah.
Really, there's nothing to protect us from that kind of mindset.
Yeah, that's a really helpful point, Luis, because it seems to me it's both halves. It's very important for the individual worker. It's a matter of rights for them, but it's also a matter of public health. We don't want people showing up for work if they're sick, if they feel sick, if they're developing it, because of course we all know that's how this virus spreads. So that's a really powerful point. Anyone else want to add?
Hello?
Go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to talk about the fact that testing is not available for a lot of us as it's been for maybe other workers. I just want to you know, the taxi drivers, the shop and stop, the crane operator, for us to have the same medical attention that, let's say, an NYPD or sanitation worker would get.
Mhm.
That would be really, that would make me feel up to par.
That's a really important point, Jessica. The whole notion, you're out there on the front lines, it's anyone who's out on the front lines is potentially exposed. And again, it's right for the worker and right for public health, for keeping all of us safe. Anyone else want to add?
Hi, I just want to add that we do at the store, we do have free testing.
Good,
And they also, they have childcare.
good.
So it really helps. It helps a lot.
That's actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, Christine, because I'm not sure if I mentioned it in my Essential Workers Bill of Rights, but there's also a provision for childcare for essential workers. I think of it very much like infrastructure. If we want people to be able to get to work, yeah, you got to have transportation to get there, but you've also got to have childcare. Parents can't do this without childcare. So that's an important part of it.
Very
Anyone else want to add?
Oh, well, Amara.
Hi, Amara.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah. I will feel value from, I will feel value if Uber will consider us employees or
Yes.
not an independent contractor, because that's the trick they use to avoid a lot of city state policies. So they said they're not the technology company, they're not a taxi company. That's why they're avoiding all those laws. While they're enforcing some laws on us, they're able to fire people, to lock people out of the app. If you do something or something happen between you and the passenger, they lock you up. But in the other way, they say you independent contractor. Yeah, so I would feel value if they would consider us like real employee with all the benefit that comes with it. And after the COVID-19, they never got back to us or giving us some masks or gels. They never give none of those. It would be better if they had given us some of the stuff. And taxi driver, right now, everybody had to pay money out of their pocket to put a kind of a separation between them and the passengers. The plastic, the plastic thing. Yeah, all the driver had to pay for that. Uber never did anything. So yeah.
Thank you, Amara. You're exactly right on this. And worker misclassification in order to evade responsibility is also an important part of the Bill of Rights. So these are really critical, and I'm grateful to all of you for telling your story, not just to me, but to everybody in New York and everybody in America. This is a moment when people recognize we have essential workers. You've always been essential workers, but now it's so much clearer how much everyone else relies on your work. And the way I see this is you've got the backs of the rest of America. The rest of America needs to have your back. And that's what the Essential Workers Bill of Rights is all about. I ask everybody, every chance I get, please use the hashtag Stand With Essential Workers. That's how we can make real change. And thank all of you who are working on this at the state level. Let's work on it at the federal level. Let's get it for everyone in this country. It's right. And forgive me, but I've got to head off to a vote about war powers. So I'll see you all later. Thanks, Brad, for putting this together.
And our Speaker Johnson is just going to thank you before you have to run.
Senator, thank you. My mom, you and I have spoken before, lives in Salem, Massachusetts, and her fiance is an essential worker at Costco. He's a technician there, and he goes in 5 days a week, and they've started to give them the protections. And my mom's a big fan. I just want to say thank you to Brad. Thank you to all of these wonderful workers, Elizabeth and Luis and Christine and Jessica and Amara. And we're just really grateful for your leadership in Congress. The plan that you have put forward is a plan that we are trying to emulate here in New York City with Brad's leadership. And New York is always happy to lead the way, but we really need the federal government's partnership in this. And I think you agree that American workers on the front line, of this pandemic deserve all these protections, no matter what city they live in. It shouldn't be just because we take action in New York City, you're protected, but another worker in a maybe more conservative state may not get those protections. That's the country that we need, a country where we support and help each other, a country where we don't just say the right thing, we actually do the right thing. My mother taught me, my mother works at a homeless shelter, and my mother taught me a slogan which I try to live by every day, which is do the most good for the people who need it the most. And that's why I was so happy to join you here today, Senator Warren, because you strive every single day to do the most good for the people who need it the most. And right now, that is our essential workers. So we're going to get it done here in New York City. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Brad. And again, I want to thank all of these brave, courageous, wonderful workers who are telling their stories and making this not just statistics, but actually making it real life on why we need to make these changes and do it right away.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Everybody else stick around because we're going to hear a little more from these workers and we're going to talk a little more about the local legislation, but we're going to let the Senator go now. Thank you so much. All right, so thank you, Corey, and welcome, and thank you for your leadership in the council, both connecting Massachusetts to New York City and also telling your story and your family's story. I also want to bring in the other two bill sponsors of packages in the New York City Essential Worker Bill of Rights. We have our Majority Leader Lori Cumbo and also Council Member Ben Kalos are here. And I think what I'd like to do now is we're just going to say just a little bit about what the bills in the New York City package are looking to do, and then we can talk a little more with the five of you about how that would help in your situation. And we have some great experts on the call as well from some of the advocacy organizations that are helping us get it done. So is Lori here?
I'm here.
Great, Lori, welcome.
Welcome, and thank you so much, Brad. I really appreciate your leadership and for Senator lending her strong efforts to this really important legislation. I'm in 1918, which is going to be critical. We've called it essential pay. I call it essential pay, but it's really an opportunity to make sure that the very workers that are on this call and all throughout this country, because New York City often leads in so many ways, and being that we are the epicenter, there are so many workers that are going to work, having to take Ubers, which might be a way of transportation they don't normally take. They might have to pay for childcare. They have to get PPE, their own PPE in many instances, and many other expenses. But let's just be realistic about this. When we talk about Vietnam, we have lost more than 10,000 people than we did in the war in Vietnam, over 68,000 people. And so when someone signed up to do a job doing deliveries, to do a job taking care of the elderly, they never really saw themselves as a frontline soldier in germ warfare. And so this is the type of situation where people who are risking their own lives, who are endangering their families, who in many cases don't have the ability to isolate themselves and have to, in many ways, they're exposing their families. So this is really a critical situation, and it's something that people need to be compensated for allowing us to stay at home and to be on these calls and having them to be on the front lines for our community. So I'm really excited that we are here today and we are standing up for all of our workers. But let's be real about this. This is not meant to put anyone out of business. This is not meant to hurt our small mom and pops. This is not meant to hurt our not-for-profits. This legislation is a starting ground so that we can build stronger legislation, so we capture those bigger companies such as the Amazons of the world, the Targets, and many other ways who have the ability to pay their workers more so that they can have a living wage. We heard from so many workers from companies like Amazon who spoke about the fact that they haven't received a wage increase, that they're working under unbearable conditions, that people fearful of speaking up and raising their voice. So it's really critical that we have the opportunity and the experience to speak up for those who don't have the voice and the ability to do so at this time. So equity is what it's all about. This world and this country are hungry for equity. And I believe until we get this equity right, we are not going to stop the ills of the world in terms of COVID-19, the hurricanes, the brush fires. We emanate an energy. And if we don't emanate the energy of equality and tranquility and the ability to live on this earth together, I don't know if we're going to get a second chance. And that's why this piece of legislation is so important. And I thank all of my colleagues for working with me on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Majority Leader. And next up is Councilmember Ben Kalos.
I want to start with a huge thank you to the most important folks on this call, our essential workers. Thank you for everything that you're doing day in, day out. Thank you to our U.S. Senator Warren for at least for me and Brad. We had hoped she might be our first woman president, but no matter what, I hope that we have a different president, one who can manage a crisis like this and actually deploy testing and what have you. I want to thank Speaker Corey Johnson, Majority Leader Cumbo, and Councilmember Lander for their partnership. Every day at 7 o'clock, everyone goes out, they clap, they holler, they bang pots and pans. For our part in our family, we blow a shofar and a conch, but the reality is we need to do more than clap. We need to provide our essential workers with protections. And one protection that we could be giving, and I want to thank Luis Torres, Chipotle worker, for putting it out there, is just protection for being able to say, hey, I don't think this is safe. I don't think I have the equipment that I need. And whether you're a healthcare worker or a worker on the front line, I want to just make sure that you can make that request, do so safely. And if your employer isn't listening and you do need to say it to somebody else like the New York Times or the media, that you can do so without fear of retaliation. And the concept that a employer can restrict your First Amendment rights and tell you you're not allowed to tell people that while they're going out there with the president saying, oh, we have enough PPEs, but you don't, and you know it, and they're asking you to stay silent, that's not okay. That's not America. Our legislation would provide just cause protection for employees so that if you are speaking out, if you are engaged in protected activity, if you are organizing your brothers and sisters and doing a walkout because Amazon won't give you safe equipment, that you'd be protected under this law. It's only during pandemics and other emergencies. I think this is something we should be doing year round. Brad Lander has legislation for fast food workers. I think we should be doing this everywhere. This doesn't mean that employers couldn't, and sadly so, for economic reasons, lay off or furlough their employees. Economics is a just cause. It's a valid reason. Not that we like it, and we'd hope that there was government money to keep people in the program and keep people employing their employees like they've done in other countries. And I'm disappointed that the federal government has put a hold on it. And so I'm hoping that we can get this done, get workers their protections, and move forward. And just thank you for the 400 or so people on the call. And I want to thank those in the chats who are sending great messages of support. Our brothers and sisters at SCIU 1199, thank you for their support. Our nurses unions, our doctors unions, so many different people fighting for this, and our workers. So thank you for having me on, and let's keep pushing.
Thank you, Ben. Corey, I know you have to jump shortly. Do you have a minute to ask another question or two? Actually, a couple of our workers are on their lunch break, so we only have them for a little while more too. Corey, you want to talk to them a little bit, ask another question or two before you have to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think the senator already asked it, and of course, it's why we're hearing these bills. We heard the bills and why we are having these conversations, but I would just love some more feedback from all of you on other ways you think that we can be helpful and supportive during this moment that we're in, but also more generally. You know, we talked about, as Ben just mentioned, the bill we've been working on with 32BJ on just cause for fast food workers. But are there other things that you see right now in your workplaces that this pandemic has really brought to the forefront on what you think we could be doing to be as helpful as possible for workers across New York City? Anyone? Amara?
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Speaker. I'm a Uber.
See you, Amara.
Yeah, I'm an Uber driver. The reason I joined Uber, I want to do a little bit of history of that. The reason I joined Uber, I used to drive a yellow cab. I've been driving I drove yellow cab for 10 years. And I didn't have a choice when I was joining Uber because I couldn't pay my rent, I couldn't pay my bills. Sometimes you go to rent the cab, you have to take money out of your pocket to pay for the cab rent because you couldn't make enough money on the street when Uber first came in the city because they destroyed the yellow cab job. Like I said, if you cannot beat them, you have to join them. I was forced to join Uber like 3 years ago. I had to go, I went to put myself in debt to get a car financing, all those, the rate. The sky was skyrocketed, so I put myself into that debt so I can feed my family. The job was a little bit better at the beginning, but now it's kind of crazy, Nobody's making money. You have to struggle to pay that debt. Sometimes you can't pay all the debt. The insurance is high, the car payment is high, the gas, everything. Uber doesn't cover any expenses. It doesn't cover. They only take their percentage and they give you the rest of the money. You don't even have to. They say of how much they charge the passenger. You don't even see that rate. How much they charge the passenger. They hide all those things. All you see is the money they put in your account. You have no idea. So that's the trick they use to cheat the drivers. So at the end of the day, you're not making money, but you stuck with the debt. And when the coronavirus came, nobody's making money anymore. So I was forced to stay home. Since I stay home, I filed for unemployment, but I haven't received no money yet. Even my stimulus check, I haven't received it yet. I depend on my wife's paycheck. She's work for the Department of Education. So I'm home for like more than 1 month now. So I got 3 kids, no income, nothing, And Uber is the one blocking that legislation for when you go on, every time I go online for the unemployment thing, they said Uber is blocking it. Uber is blocking it. For them to pay us, Uber had to accept it, but Uber is still blocking it. For more than 1 month now, we haven't received anything.
Thank you, Amara. And I know that we were able to work together a couple of years ago. You're such a leader in the New York Taxi Alliance. The work that we did on pausing the issuance of new licenses for Uber in New York City, given what that did to the market. I mean, the taxi industry and for-hire vehicle workers, we know were struggling before this crisis hit. We were seeing it every single day. You saw the news of the number of, tragic death by suicide, workers who were taking their own lives because they got into loans that they were snookered into and they couldn't afford. And this issue of Uber and other for-hire vehicle companies not wanting to treat their employees as employees, they want them to be independent contractors, is one that we need a reckoning on. Unfortunately, in the city council, we don't have the legislative authority ourselves to force that. There was, I believe, and Brad will maybe know this, or Amara, you will know it better than me, there was a good court ruling in California saying that Uber drivers and for-hire vehicle drivers must be treated like employees and not like independent contractors. And so I'll just sort of end with this because I want to turn it back to Brad. There's going to be a lot of things that we are going to have to look at in the wake of this a massive amount of loss we've seen, the number of New Yorkers who have died, and the economic devastation and trauma that's been inflicted upon so many over the last 8 weeks. And my hope, not to be a Pollyanna or a wide-eyed optimist, but my hope is that coming out of this, if we get rid of Donald Trump and if we can elect a Democratic majority in the Senate, that we'll be able to do some transformative things like Senator Warren was talking about earlier today. The National Health Service in the UK was created after they came out of the war in the 1940s. FDR coming out of the Great Depression is what set us up for the New Deal. We need a New Deal for America. We need a New Deal for workers. We need a New Deal for just working class Americans who for too long have been screwed in many ways, while corporations and multinational companies have been able to take advantage of too many people. So my hope is that if we see that transformative change this November, if they're not able to steal the election from keeping people from voting, and we actually have people turn out and vote, that we will be in a moment where all the things you're talking about, Amara, and the other things that these workers, brave workers, Christine and Jessica and Elizabeth and Luis have talked about, that it won't just be city by city of this city council or that city council or this state or that state trying to take action, that we will actually see movement on the federal level to protect workers, to raise their wages, to have a single payer healthcare system, to have guaranteed childcare. Those are the things that we need. And I'm just tremendously grateful for your work organizing, which is what you've done for years, for speaking out, and anything that we can do, me, Brad, Lori, or Ben, to help you during these hard days and weeks. Let us know. We're here for you and your family.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Speaker. And Amara, I'll just add a little about what our package does on that front that Speaker Johnson alluded to. I'm pleased that in the package that we're considering at the City Council, there's two things that I think are really come from you and your fellow for-hire vehicle drivers and other misclassified folks. One is, we don't control a lot of the issues at the state level about who's considered an employee or independent contractor to get unemployment insurance or rights to organize. We are passing a resolution calling on the state, like joining you guys in calling on the state to pass a bill that makes sure that misclassified workers like Uber and Lyft drivers, nail salon techs, food delivery workers like Instacart folks are classified as employees. We're gonna have to get the state to make that change. But we are doing one thing in the meantime, because in New York City, we do have control over our paid sick leave law. Right now, W-2 workers have paid sick leave, and we can, through Intro 1926, that's part of this package, make sure that folks like you do have sick leave. So that bill in this package, if we pass it, would give Uber and Lyft and Instacart workers and Amazon Flex paid sick leave, just like workers who are working, who are paid with a W-2, while we use that resolution and continue to organize with you to fight for that change, the broader change at the state level. I want to introduce.
We have to run, but I want to thank everyone. Thank you all. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to you amazing workers out there. We're really grateful, and we look forward to moving this legislation. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you so much, Corey. Great to have you. All right, so, and actually, I guess I know a couple of the workers. I want to bring in some of the organizations who have helped us build this legislation, because Senator Warren, she probably by herself is like a smart enough policy wonk that she can like listen to the workers and then write the bills. But the rest of us need like an army of people in our unions, in our nonprofits, in our advocacy organizations, and our legal backup support centers who actually help us translate it into real policy. But before I bring them in, I think a couple of you guys are on your lunch break. So if anybody of the workers have to leave in the next 2 minutes and you have something you want to share before you have to do, I just want to give you a chance to do that before we hear from a couple of our other partners.
I have probably another 5-10 minutes, but I just wanted to say, from a Teamster point of view, we're from California to New York, and every day you can see on our Instagram, on our Facebook, we've lost a brother or a sister. And I want to make sure, because it's not if it's gonna happen, but when it's gonna happen again, we're gonna get hit with another version or worse version of the corona. I want something to be done for our families, for every member that's lost. And I don't want us to be a number. I want us to be a name. All you see on the news are numbers, numbers. But with names, maybe we'll take it more serious. Yeah, I just don't feel like from the political side and company side, we just don't matter. We just really don't matter. And if we don't come to work, we don't feed our families, but then we're bringing stuff to our families. Like I told you before, a lot of our members, we might not show symptoms, but a lot of our family members, husbands and wives and children have gotten sick, but we know we've brought it to them, but there's no choice but to come to work. We have to keep feeding our families. So I want to make sure safety is number one. And the sick leave that you guys are talking about, that's tremendous because they'll be able to take care of their families. And I just want to make sure that we're taken care of, and we have to move up on the scale. We can't be, we have to be essential. I want us to be all even.
Amen. I mean, I think that word essential, like you could use it in one of two ways. You could treat people like you understood what it meant, or you could try to just use it as a hollow word to pretend like you saw what mattered without actually doing the things that mattered. And I think what you just said there is really powerful. And I think that idea of making sure where lives are lost, that people's families get a serious benefit, like the MTA has now done, and also that we all do better at just really honoring people. It's so hard in this crisis because we're losing so many, to remember that like every person deserves that honor and memory. So, and I want to actually use this as a moment because you mentioned being the active the shop steward with the Teamsters local. Like the workers on this call are folks who go to work every day and do all the work we just heard about and organize with your unions. And I guess it goes to say that, like, you know, it might be we get the help from the advocates we're going to hear from in a minute to craft legislation that's responsive, but the only way that power is built for working people to make the kinds of big changes that the senator was talking about and that we're trying to do here, the only way that power is really built for workers to win justice is through our unions. And so we've got some great unions represented on this call. Yours, the Teamsters, SEIU 1199, SEIU 32BJ, RWDSU, and the New York Taxi Workers Alliance. And there's others that are with us in this fight, New York State Nurses Association and CIR and Communications Workers of America. It's because we have unions helping work together to build power that your leadership is elevated, like not just on this call, but in the halls of City Council and the halls of Congress. And that is really what matters. So thank you, not just for your stories, but for being active with your unions and working to build power together for working people, but also just for justice in our country. Okay. Anybody else that has to? Joe, actually, let me bring in these our advocates because they've been very patient and we're coming toward the back quarter of the hour. So if you have to jump, wave your hand and let me know, and I can call you in. Jessica, thank you so much. Stay strong out there. We really, really appreciate you. All right, as I mentioned, in addition to those labor unions, in addition to council members, we've had some great help from a series of advocacy organizations. And I'm going to introduce all three of them, and then they could take it away. National Employment Law Project is the national organization that helps workers support and fight and win laws that do better by working people. You guys, a lot of you know Legal Aid, New York City, who help defend workers in court, and A Better Balance has helped fight for things like sick leave and paid leave and things that make it possible for workers, especially, but not only women workers, to have a balance between work and home. And they've all been essential. We would not have the New York City package without them. So first, Paul San from NEP.
Brad, actually, my colleague Hugh Baran is speaking.
Oh, great. My bad.
Sorry.
Hugh, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks.
I saw that you guys both put on a suit for this.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, Brad. And first, I want to thank all the brave essential workers who joined us for this conversation today. This crisis is laying bare our city's extreme racial and economic inequality. Not only have communities of color borne the brunt of the pandemic, but workers of color make up 75% of New York's essential workforce. All of us at the National Employment Law Project are so grateful that we have bold progressive leaders like Speaker Johnson, Councilman Lander, Councilman Kalos, and Senator Warren taking up the cause of essential workers. They understand that essential workers deserve more than applause. They need real protection and just compensation as they shoulder the burden of this crisis. The groundbreaking New York City Essential Workers Bill of Rights would do three things. First, it would ensure through its just cause safeguards that workers feel safe speaking up about COVID hazards without fearing for their jobs by providing them with protection against unfair firing. Second, workers wouldn't be forced to bear the burden of paying out of pocket for their PPE or struggling to pay their rent because their family members are out of work. Instead, the council's proposal would provide essential workers with just compensation through premium pay to help cover those costs. Finally, we need to ensure all essential workers have access to paid sick leave if they are sick to protect both them and the public's health as well. The council's proposal will extend paid sick leave to gig workers like Instacart delivery staff or Uber drivers who are left out of state and federal guarantees. New York has the opportunity to lead the nation in showing how local government can respond to this crisis. So if you are watching right now and you live in New York City, please pick up your cell phone, call your council member, and urge them to support this very important package. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Hugh. All right, from Legal Aid, Ricky, are you speaking? All right, maybe we lost Ricky for a minute. Cassandra, are you? Can you dive in and?
My colleague Molly Weston Williamson.
All right, shows what I know. All right.
Thank you so much, Councilmember, and thank you, Cassandra, and thank you again to all of the amazing essential workers on this call. I think we're all just so grateful for you taking time on your lunch break again to educate us and inform us about what you need. It's never been more crucial to protect the health and safety of our essential workers who are risking their lives for us each day on the front lines of this crisis. Now more than ever, all workers deserve the paid sick time they need to care for themselves and their families and fight the spread of diseases like the coronavirus. Paid sick time is not just a workers' rights issue, it's an invaluable public health tool. Research shows that workers with access to paid sick leave are far less likely to go to work sick or send a sick child to school or daycare, which reduces the spread of contagious disease in our communities. For instance, one study estimates that during the H1N1 swine flu crisis, 5 million cases could have been prevented if everyone had access to paid sick leave. Today and every day, the health of our country depends on giving workers the tools they need to protect themselves, their families, and our communities. Here in New York, as the council member so kindly noted, A Better Balance drafted, fought for, and won the original New York City Earned Sick Time Act, a landmark law that really marked a critical turning point in the national paid sick time movement. Again, another example of New York City leading the way for the country. But today, too many workers, ranging from legacy industries like construction or shipping to new app-based gig workers like some of the ones who've spoken today, are denied their rights because their employers wrongfully misclassify them as independent contractors, not entitled to the rights and protections of employees under the law. We're so proud to stand with our coalition partners, our champions on the council, and Senator Warren in support of essential workers, including legislation to clarify the city's sick time law and ensure beyond all doubt that New York City workers can take the time they need when they need it most without risking their paycheck or their job. Nationally, the recently enacted Families First Coronavirus Response Act provides a federal right to paid sick leave for the first time in American history. For millions of Americans, this groundbreaking law offers critically needed emergency protections, allowing them the paid, job-protected time they need to recover from illness, care for their loved ones, and avoid spreading the disease. But the fight isn't over. Families First leaves out millions of workers, including many of those on the front lines, like healthcare workers and grocery store clerks. And its protections, unlike New York City's law, are temporary, set to expire at the end of this year. At the same time that we're proud to support these efforts here at the city level, A Better Balance also calls on Congress to protect our essential workers and our public health by guaranteeing robust, permanent paid sick time for all workers across the country, because nobody should have to choose between their life and their livelihood.
Thank you, Molly. All right, and let's see, Ricky Blum from Legal Aid, are you still there? All right, maybe we lost Ricky, but Legal Aid has also been a really critical partner in this fight, in addition to a really dynamite coalition. And I really want to especially appreciate that it was the lawyers who got the call to action in. So, but we all can take a call to action. So please do, as the senator said, tweet or do social media with the hashtag Stand With Essential Workers. We've got a petition up for the Essential Worker Bill of Rights on our webpage at landerfornyc.com, and we'll send that around to people as well. We have a real chance here to move, with the voices that we've heard today from Christine and Elizabeth and Amara and Luis and Jessica, really groundbreaking legislation inspired by what Senator Warren is moving at the national level. And it'll make a big difference in New York City, but it'll also build toward powerful national legislation that really can do right. All right, now I see Ricky is back. So we'll hear from Ricky, and then we'll give a final word to any of our workers who wanna close us out. But Ricky, I'm glad you're back with us. We praised you.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Good, okay. Sorry about that, I'm having a lot of technical problems. First of all, thank you and thank the council members who are pushing this agenda. It's incredibly important to the well-being of workers. I also want to mention my union, UAW, is part of this. They're a critical part of supporting a lot of the progressive legislation in the state and city around these issues. For us, from our point of view at Legal Aid, two of the main obstacles to vindicating workers' rights are misclassification and retaliation. They are perennial problems, particularly for the clients we represent, who are the most marginalized workers in the city. Misclassification is just cheating. It's cheating workers out of their rights, and it's unfair competition. So when the business community says, oh, this bill is a problem for us, they really don't have an explanation for that, since what they're really saying is people should go ahead cheating and compete unfairly with their other members. That doesn't make any sense. And it's always been bad for workers. Now it's actually dangerous. It's extremely dangerous for the workers, and it's dangerous for the entire community not to allow people to have the sick leave that they need. As far as retaliation is concerned, of course, obviously, the threat of losing a job is a horrendous chilling factor that prevents people from speaking up and saying these conditions are unsafe. And once again, it's not only dangerous for the workers, extremely dangerous now, it's dangerous for all of us. So there's no good reason to permit retaliation. And while we have a patchwork of laws that, address this form of retaliation or that, the worker has to prove that that's why they were fired. Here, we're saying, no, every employer has to act rationally, has to have justifications, has to communicate properly with their workforce. There's nothing wrong with requiring this of everyone. All employers should be doing this anyway. So the idea that this is something that's a burden or unreasonable in a time of crisis, no, it's actually particularly needed in a time of crisis. So we thank you, Brad. We thank the members of the council who are leading this fight for these absolutely critical protections that are vital for worker safety, for the safety of their families, and for the entire community in fighting this virus. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ricky. We disabled the chat first of all, I want to say we had 500 people on the Zoom and another 1,000 people on Facebook in this hour listening to the stories of these workers and what we're trying to do. We didn't want the senator to get Zoom bombed, so we turned off the chat. So I'm going to try to give it to you here. You could use the hashtag Stand With Essential Workers, or there's a bit.ly link, NYC-essential-workers, to sign the petition. We'll send it around as well to people whose emails we had on the call, but let's keep pushing because we can really, I think what I find now is when I go out on my stoop at 7 tonight, like who I'm gonna have in mind are Luis and Christine and Elizabeth and Jessica and Amara, like thanking you guys personally, not just like banging on a pot generically, remembering your stories and then using it to fight for those changes that we need. So I wonder if you guys, just before we close out, would just give us kind of a final word about what you're hoping for on the job, in the coming days, but also what you're hoping we can win together coming out of this.
Amar?
You're up.
Yeah, I hope everybody come out of this very strong. The economy too, because without the economy, nobody will do well. And I hope that all these, those big companies, corporations, they know that the income coming from the sweat of the little workers, and those little workers, they have family behind them, and that's why they're getting out to take risks to go find money or food to come back home to feed their families. And beyond those income they're getting, big corporation, beyond the bottom line, they have to see life behind those. The money they're getting in the billionaires, like Uber, they have to see beyond those money workers, people have life, and without those people, there wouldn't be, big corporation. So they have to trickle those benefits down to the little man, not to the shareholder. So I hope they understand that, coming out of this, 'cause we're gonna rebuild the economy again. Like they said, the middle class build the economy, not the big corporation, not the shareholders. So coming out of this, I hope they understand that paradigm. They understand that without little men, there won't be a big person. So I hope everybody understand that. The logic.
That was really well said. Really well said. I would be anxious to go after that, but if anyone else has wants to close us out, let's just really show. I really want to say thank you to the workers who came for this call. You guys are great, and we know how hard you're working, and that you also took the time to do this and show up. It just means a lot. In the hospitals, in those food stores, in the fast food, on the job. We're really, really grateful. So thank you guys for making the time. Thank you, Councilmember Kalos and Majority Leader Combo, our partners in legislation, getting this done, to all our partners who are making it happen. We're going to win this, and we're going to win it because the moral voice and the organized power of our workers here demands it. So thank you all so much for being on this call. Let's keep listening to and standing with our essential workers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody stay safe.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.